It's been a while. Time for another devlog of Cosmicreach, a block game featuring colored lights, an unlimited build height, and a future focus on space. Now, I did promise multiplayer a while back, and considering how much more fun it is to play games with friends, it's time this monstrous task is finally tackled. It took many months of preparation, followed by a month of prototyping, and another to actually accomplish it. So now let's look at what was needed to get multiple players in the same world. Multiplayer in Cosmicreach uses a server, which runs the game's logic for everyone, and clients, which are the game of each player in the server. To communicate with each other, they send messages which are called packets. Packets can be something like telling the client what blocks are where, or the client sending chat messages to other players, or the server telling clients who moved where. If any information about the game needs to be shared between the clients and the server, it's a packet. The game uses the netty library to send packets with TCP. What we'll focus on, however, is the payload of the packet, as the netty library handles the underlying networking for us. Each game packet is a list of bytes that represents information depending on the type of packet, similar to how the game saves are serialized. But netty just gives us the raw bytes, and not individual packet objects. That's for us to construct out of them. So we start each packet's list of bytes with a short number representing the ID of the packet type, which tells us what the list of bytes means. For example, a list of bytes for a chat message might start with 2 bytes for the number 10, and a list of bytes for the player movement might start with 2 bytes from the number 11. From this we can interpret what to do with the packet data by reading the first 2 bytes. But now we run into a problem. How do we know what ID is for what packet? Well, we could register each packet to have their own ID, but what would happen if a game of a different version were to connect? What if a game is modded and registers packets in an unexpected order? Both the server and the client must agree on the order for anything to work at all. So we have one special packet, the protocol sync packet. This always has an ID of 1, no matter what, and it's responsible for telling the client which packets have which IDs, so that the client can register them correctly, no matter the order. If the client matches all the packets of the server, then all is well. Otherwise, the client gives up connecting since it wouldn't be able to communicate with the server properly, as in the case of a version mismatch. This is useful because it means an incompatible client and server versions will correctly disconnect before strange effects can happen. For example, let's say that in the client's version a chat message packet has an ID of 10, and a movement packet has an ID of 11. In the server's version, these are swapped for some reason. Then when you move your player, the server will interpret that movement as a chat message of complete garbage, and tell everyone that you were spouting nonsense. Which you would never do, right? As for the other packets, each one has specific instructions on how to interpret the rest of the bytes. For example, the packet responsible for chat messages has 2 strings, one for the player ID and one for the chat message itself. So for each string we have 4 bytes for the length followed by the string in the UTF-8 char set. As such, the game knows to take the list of bytes, understand that it's a chat message packet, then parse the player who sent it, followed by parsing what they sent in chat. For other packets, the process is exactly the same. We read the first 2 bytes to get the type of packet, and then we use that type to parse the data it expects. The packet system is very simple and modular in this regard, and understanding this, packets can be made easily, reusing the same principles as saving, which is serialization. So, the server and clients can talk to each other, which means we have everything we need to actually share the world between multiple players. Fantastic. But there's a teensy little problem. Imagine a griefer logs onto the server and starts destroying everything against everyone's wishes. So he should be banned, of course, but how do you ban him? Without taking the accounts into consideration, he could put anything as the username, and the server would be forced to believe him. Meaning if the griefer impersonates you and uses your username, you're the one who will get banned. Of course, accounts are the solution to this, since they provide proof you are who you say you are. Accounts generally are set up with the database on the server, following security principles like never storing passwords in plain text, using strong hashes, salting, and so on. But you know what's even more secure? Not dealing with passwords at all. After all, if I make a single mistake, there could be a database leak, and everyone would have their passwords stolen. That's unacceptable, and outright shameful. So we can't trust players without an authentication system, and we must avoid storing passwords ourselves unless absolutely necessary. Well, when you get the game via itch, you have the option to log in via an itch account. So can we use that instead? Absolutely. We now have everything we need to make an authentication system, including an itch API key, also known as a token, which is basically a long string given to you by itch to prove you have an itch account. a secret key used to prove that the authentication server is the one responsible for requests, and lastly, a virtual private server with an HTTPS certificate provided by Let's Encrypt. I set up the authentication server with a job that renews the HTTPS certificates every so often. HTTPS is important as it keeps the requests and responses of the authentication server secret. We also have to renew automatically, otherwise the certificate will expire and the game will stop working. The authentication system works as follows. Firstly, the player launches the game via the itch launcher, which gives a token to the game client. This is proof that you are the account owner, so it needs to never fall into the hands of other players or game servers. Secondly, we connect to a game server which gives back a challenge, which is a string unlikely to be shared by others, to mitigate replay attacks. Then we give the itch token and the challenge to the Auth server. This basically tells the Auth server, hey, this is who we are and this is where we want to go. The Auth server gets the account profile from the itch server along with the challenge string and packs it into a session token which is signed by the secret key. This lasts for 30 minutes, as to prevent replay attacks after that time has elapsed. The Auth server gives the session token to the client, which hands it over to the game server, which hands it back to the Auth server, along with the challenge key again. Why did it do all that? Just to get it back to the Auth server. Because now the game server has the session token now, and has to prove that it came from the Auth server independently, just in case the client was lying. So, the Auth server unpacks the session token using the secret key, which proves it was the one that made it. Then it checks it against the challenge key, which means that this was meant for the requesting game server. At this point, all the checks have been made, and the Auth server can send back the itch profile to the game server. Now it knows for certain that the client is not lying about its username. Knowing the usernames means that we can safely moderate players, and it means that we can save information such as the inventory, the player position, and so on, using a file named after the account's ID. Each account has a display name which can be just about anything, a username, which is unique at a given point in time, and an account ID, which is guaranteed to always be unique and to never change. The display name is used for chat, the username for commands and moderation, and the ID for saving permanent information such as player data, permissions, or bans. As a result, we have an account system that is both secure and can be easily modified to support more account services in the future, such as Steam. Since I'm not hosting the accounts directly, it's future-proof from needing account migrations. Our efforts throughout the last few months have finally paid off, and now you can play together in the same world. I did say in the end of the last video that this was going to be about survival, but in all honesty, even though I accomplished everything I intended to, it didn't feel like enough, which is why I went ahead to adding multiplayer. Of course, this continued, and I ended up adding more and more features with no devlog in sight. So since the last time, not only did the new world generation and survival mode get introduced, but as did commands, medkits, tools, a furnace, ores, per face shading, a way to obtain water, fog, and with the help of some very talented people, contributions like 3D item models, username name tags, and most anticipated, an official music soundtrack, of which we're hearing right now. But as far as the devlogs go, the development of the game has changed from what am I going to do for the next devlog to what am I going to do for the next update? This is making it more challenging to decide how to present a video, so I'd like to ask you what you would like to see in future devlogs. Would you rather they explain in detail like I have been so far? Or would you like them to be more slice of life style, where I add a feature and talk about my thought process in doing so? Is there anything you'd like me to cover that I haven't discussed yet? Many game features didn't make it into previous episodes because they didn't fit the theme. I ask this because I've recently received a lot of encouragement from you guys, given the long gap since the last devlog, and I want to go back to the fact that this is a journey and not just a race to the end product. So I need to consider how to start making more devlogs again. That said, for the game, most of the major hurdles are being overcome at this point in the road to alpha, where we can finally focus on the game design and not just the fundamentals. While I have a plan on what to work on next, I want to take a step back and listen to what everyone has to say. Stay tuned. Take care. Have a very Merry Christmas, and I'll see you next time.